Hello, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to Satsang. Satsang is an ancient spiritual practice from India. It means being in reality together. I give Satsang live every Wednesday and Sunday night in Portland, Maine. This Dharma talk was recorded during one of our Wednesday night gatherings. Please visit jayakula.org to learn more about the teachings. You can find video satsangs on Jayakula's YouTube channel, and my books are all available on Amazon.com. Much love to you, wherever and however you are. So the topic of tonight's talk is nothing is ever going to go right.
Yeah, everything is difficult.
At the same time, nothing is ever going to go wrong. And if you are living your life along the axis of did it go right or did it go wrong, you're completely in suffering. Most of us live our lives frantically trying to make things go well. That's about 95% of our lives. Trying to make things go well, and then getting upset when they don't go well. But nothing ever goes right and nothing ever goes wrong. And if we stepped out of that scenario of something is either going to go right or well, or it's going to go badly or wrong, if we stepped out of that scenario, imagine if you weren't at all engaged with that. You weren't thinking that anything ever went wrong or that anything ever went right. What would you do with your time? See, the thing is that when we get out of the fantasy that something could go well or badly, then we actually have to deal with circumstance. We actually have to work with what's really happening. In a plain, straightforward way. There's just stuff arising in front of you, and you're working with it, you're dealing with it, you're engaging with it, you're communicating with it. And there isn't any trajectory. There's no distant point that you're trying to reach where you can go, phew, that went well, or, oh no, that went badly. There isn't any success. And there isn't any failure either. And almost every one of you, if not every one of you, is living your life, including your spiritual life, along an axis of success and failure. You think, did I have a good practice today? Is my practice going well? Oh no, my practice is going badly. And then you're suffering. And not only that, you're living in a total fantasy. And you're expending enormous amounts of energy trying to avoid failure or collapse or disintegration or whatever, humiliation, and trying to succeed, trying to be successful, to tell yourself that you've gotten somewhere. So the thing is that if we buy into that, if we live only from that relative perspective, then we just live a life of total suffering inside of a hologram fantasy of our own making. So just try to imagine right now, just try to feel right. What if there was no success and no failure? It just dumps you right out into presence. When you're trying to succeed, you're not being in presence. When you're trying to have a success in order to stave off the boogeyman of failure, you are not being in presence. When you're trying to be successful at being liked, or successful at some career goal, or successful at receiving acclaim at something, or successful at achieving something spiritually, you're not being in presence. You've lost the game. So, for instance, today was just a day of some people, students, being anxious about whether they were doing something well in relationship to me, like something I'd asked them to do, or just something we were talking about. And so then there was these funny moments where the same people who were trying to do well and be thought of well by me were just completely being fumbly and bumbly and not being in presence and completely missing the point of what was actually happening. Because people are so locked up in this cage of wanting to be successful and be seen as successful. So whenever you're doing that, even if you're telling yourself, oh, I'm trying to do my practice well, I'm trying to do what Shambhavi wants me to do, trying to be a good student. These are all just the flip side of trying not to fail at this, trying not to be humiliated, trying to be admired, trying to be seen a certain way. And it's just a cage of suffering. Every phenomenon that is arising, including your sadhana, including your relationship with me, including your careers, including everything that you're trying to do, every phenomenon, whether it's disintegrating or building, whether it's you get acclaim or humiliated, whatever happens, every single phenomenon is totally equal. And it's not going anywhere. God is not on a mission. God is not trying to improve on God. There's no career path for God. God has already accomplished everything spiritually there is to accomplish. In fact, there's no idea of accomplishment. So if you're just totally being in relative view, living your life chasing the bag of success and admiration, and trying to frantically, fearfully run away from failure and humiliation or loss or disintegration, you're completely out of your practice, 100% out of it. And all your energy is just bound up in that. Tremendous amounts of Shakti bound up in that. Looking like you're trying to do your best. Sometimes people, because I wrote a blog post a while ago, years ago, it was something like everyone is doing their best. And some people have taken that an excuse for just staying in fixations. Right. And using that teaching to support fixation. So even if you keep insisting that you're trying and you're doing your best, I'm trying, what are you really trying to do? Right? You're trying to get some sort of reward. The richness of life is actually just in everything. Whether it's, you want to call it success or failure or accomplishment or not. The richness of life is in everything. The reward is in everything. And that's what we're trying to make contact with. You can only succeed at your practice by dropping all notions of success and failure. You can only succeed at serving your teacher and your community if you drop all notions of whether you're successful at it or not, or being admired for it, or what anyone thinks of you, or being afraid of the teacher, or afraid of criticism. All that stuff is completely beside the point. The only way we can be of real service is to be in presence, and to actually be listening, watching, feeling, and dealing with what is right here. Then you just become naturally skillful. You don't have to think about whether you're doing something in a successful way or not, right? When you're being in presence, when you're just dealing with what's here, right in front of you, without any grand plan or aggression, like that aggression of wanting to succeed and be seen succeeding, or wanting to please somebody, or just wanting to avoid criticism or something or other, whatever goes on. Wanting to be right, not wanting to be wrong. Wow, that's just a terrible way to live. And you'll never be skillful that way. Of course, you can become skillful in a conventional sense, right? You could get a job in corporate America and climb the ladder. You could climb the Seva ladder. You could climb the spiritual ladder. You could make up a ladder. So many people treat their spiritual, not just people in this community, but everywhere, in this country anyway. So many people treat their spiritual practice like some sort of career path. Right? And you're going to get these accomplishments, and then you're going to, initiations and empowerments are like these little badges. Right? And any little thing that happens, you brag about, or you brag about that you do so much practice, or you think about what level you're at, or how you are in comparison to other people, etc. You have to understand, none of that is spiritual practice. It will get you nowhere, and the only thing you're doing is feeding small self. You're feeding the thing that you say you're trying to undermine. There's only one thing to do, and that's to be dealing with what's actually happening. You don't have to think about anything else. And then you just become naturally skillful. Like when you're really listening to the teacher, you're not having this anxiety running about being seen as being helpful or something, whatever is happening. Then you're just automatically unhelpful. Then all that's happening is the teacher has to digest your anxiety and try to somehow salvage something from that situation. That's what we're here for. That's okay. And I'm here to point this out. There's ways to be more in actual circumstance and less in fantasy that you can put into place without being terribly far along in your practice. One of those ways is practicing open listening. Just being there listening to someone, each other. I brought this up on Sunday too. Right? Just actually listening to words and listening to someone and whatever is coming from them. That's a beautiful practice you can do to become more in presence and more skillful. A lot of people are so wrapped up in their anxiety or their mental machinations, whatever it is, that they're not even listening really. And so then a lot of clumsiness results from that, right? The other thing you can do is practice ordinary presence. This is something I learned from Namkhai Norbu Rinpoche. So it's not fancy presence, it's not the cosmic presence. But it's important, to be in the ordinary present. And you can do that by narrating to yourself what's happening. I'm standing here talking to Shambhavi. She's drinking a tea, I'm drinking a tea. Now I'm walking over to the counter and putting my tea down. Shambhavi's still talking. Just very quietly and neutrally narrating to yourself what's happening. That's a way of kind of basically eviscerating the fantasy and just being in that present with what's actually happening. It's very difficult because your energy is so used to running into the fantasy, being drained into the fantasy. And you get anxious because the fantasy is basically about survival. So all the fantasy that you're generating about plans and accomplishments and to-do lists, and does this person think what of me, and oh, I just made that person think something of me, or I'm angry about this, or I'm sad about that, or blah, 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 blah. All that stuff is like this, it's like the survival mechanism of small self. And when you stop that activity, when you stop just doing it and pouring your energy into those kinds of realm fantasies, you encounter the void, right? Directly. You encounter space and openness, space element. And you encounter vastness. And then little self panics. This is why it's so hard to do this. Even just to be in ordinary presence. Even just to be saying, I'm sitting on my cushion, I'm listening to Shambhavi, I'm scratching my ear. You can just be doing this very, very simple thing, and then suddenly panic will arise. Or this feeling of compulsion that, no, I can't keep doing this. I have to go back to thinking about what my mom thinks of me, or what I'm going to do 5 minutes from now, or how can I get so-and-so to like me better, or, oh no, I'm not as good as other students. It's interesting that just trying to do something as simple as narrate to yourself what is actually happening right now can cause panic or a compulsion to stop doing that. Because it's like you just threw away the little white picket fence hovel that little I is living in, right? You've got this little area staked out, this little house that you've constructed more or less out of all this stuff that you're doing with your energy and your mind. And when you get rid of that, all of a sudden you're not trying to control anything. If you're just saying, you're eating dinner, I'm picking up my fork, I'm chewing my tortilla, whatever it is, putting my fork down, all of a sudden you're not controlling anything. You're no longer making the effort to construct this life of purpose and significance and success and struggle. You're no longer doing that. And it's really, really scary. That's funny how something so simple can be so scary. But just think about it right now. If you just dropped all struggle, all effort to succeed or fend off failure, and then the truth comes out that you actually have to deal with your life. You have to deal with livingness. You have to deal with the actual alive quality of things. Because when we're only in our anxiety and our plans and our struggles and our race to success and our race away from failure, we are living in a dead world. We really are. We're living in a dead world. A world that's just constructed out of dead things, fantasies. And in a way, it really is scary to get back to the actual living quality of things. The immediacy, the zing of actually, we're actually here together. You're actually with other people. They're not just puppets or shadow puppets in your fantasy. They're not just little pawns you move around in your fantasy mind to help you keep perpetuating that little bit of vastness you have staked out for yourself. So you can do those two things is just practice listening to what's actually happening, seeing what's actually there, and doing that ordinary, being in the ordinary present. And then during this little talk, if you've managed to have a moment or two of experience of not doing all the stuff that I just described, try to not do it more often. Jayakula is a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. We are based in Portland, Maine and Portland, Oregon. Visit jayakula.org to explore more of our offerings.